Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. Welcome to this episode of No Instructions. Today we have Jordon from BoomCloud with us. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So we have a mutual friend, it turns out.
Yes.
But you know, we're gonna get into your story. And before we do that, like give us like Twitter style, sweet and short, what is BoomCloud for those that are like itching to know what you're CEO of today?
Sweet. Yes. I am the CEO of BoomCloud, bootstrap company. We help dental practice and optometry practice create membership programs as an alternative to dental insurance.
Interesting.
So we're disrupting the insurance model in dentistry. That's where most of our clients are. So think like Amazon Prime, but for the practice to patients, right?
Yeah.
Our platform manages all that, and we allow practices to create recurring revenue. Think the SaaS model in dentistry.
Right.
So we're helping them create a better business model with membership programs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Certainly a space to be disrupted. I look at businesses like, I don't know, utilities or healthcare or whatever, and I say, I don't want to bear the burden of disrupting that, but you please do it. Someone please do it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, where does your story start?
Pre-BoomCloud?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I started my career in 2008 in the middle of a recession.
Great timing.
Perfect timing. My dad owns a dental lab, which is not a lot of people confuse it with a dentist. My dad's not a dentist. He owns a dental lab. They created restorative like crowns and dentures for the
so
dentists.
a lab is like, you know, where you get a mold and then they make a tooth and then send it back to the dentist, right?
Yep. So I started my career in the middle of the recession managing a dental lab. And the idea was to take it over because it was a family-run business.
So was that like maybe your choice? Did you think or actually consider it? Or was it like your dad was kind of like, hey, we have this business and there's no one else to do it and I need you to do it?
Yeah, I never wanted to get into dentistry growing up because both my parents are in dentistry. So I got a lot of that.
I think everyone who's a dentist probably says that, right?
Yeah.
And a lawyer.
Yeah, and a lawyer. Yeah, both industries are very similar.
Especially.
Yeah, so by the time I started my career, it was really tough to get a job and to find opportunities. But my dad needed help managing his lab. He was a really good technician. If you read E-Myth Revisited, the lab, their job role is called the technician, and they're exactly what Michael Gerber speaks about in his book. So he was very technician-minded, and he struggled managing his business. And I love business, read every business book under the sun. And he, at a very young age, he gave me the opportunity to run his company. And I look at that as like my MBA school.
Yeah.
With that, getting paid to get my MBA, basically.
Yeah. Better than an MBA.
Better than
in
an
some
MBA.
places.
Yeah, because I was getting my hands dirty with actual customers and actual business process. So that's why I got started.
Where did your dad start that business? Like how old were you?
Yeah. So, it actually was my grandpa who
really?
purchased the business.
So you're talking like a deep family business. So you had to do this.
Yeah. Right now, my younger brother is running the lab.
No way.
Yeah.
Cool.
So third generation running that business. My whole family, at least on my dad's side, they're all entrepreneurs, right? My grandpa purchased the dental lab from the original owner, which that lab started in 1906.
Whoa.
It's been
Where's it at?
It's in Salt Lake.
Wow.
It's called Salt Lake Dental Lab.
Yeah, cool.
So my grandpa was very entrepreneurial. My dad, took over my grandpa's dental lab, and then it's now being passed to my younger brother.
What city did you grow up in?
I grew up in Sandy, Utah.
Okay, and so for those that don't know, it's a suburb of Salt Lake, basically.
Yep.
Did what about your mom? What'd your mom do?
My mom was an office manager for a dental office.
No, she was not.
Yeah.
You guys are deep in the teeth, man. This is so awesome.
Yeah.
This is so great.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn a lot right now.
Yeah. We won't talk clinical. That's more.
So did your dad, do you feel like your dad was an entrepreneur, or did he really kind of I know he's technical.
Yeah,
but
very technical. Yeah, entrepreneur to a point. Nothing like myself or my grandpa. It's almost like it skipped a generation. He was he was great with relationships and people loved him. Like our customers loved him at the dental lab. And he definitely operates his business like it's still in business, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely in my era there was things he needed to adjust. He didn't have a marketing process or sales process. It's like, well, we don't know. Obviously, he's evolved over time, and we learned a lot together. I ran that business for about 8 years with him, and I'm a twin.
Yeah.
My twin brother was there. And then
is that the brother who's running it now?
No, it's actually my younger brother who's 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
I grabbed my twin to be our chief operating officer at BoomCloud.
Stop it right now. He works for you right now?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
That's really cool. Do you guys ever like try to play tricks on people, call a fake meeting with the wrong person?
Yeah, it's so hard. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. We're so different.
They know.
Yeah, it's so easy to tell.
I have brothers who are twins, and there's a funny time when my brother was like moving. So one of the twins got married. My brother Ryan and his twin brother Jacob was like moving to another apartment, and he needed a place for like a week. So he stayed at their house. They're like newlyweds, and he like played like my. Like they knew each other. They were married, obviously, but my brother Ryan, who had just been married, played a joke on his wife pretending to be his brother and like accidentally like was naked. And she walked in. He's like, "Oh, don't look at me." Anyway, so
that's good.
Sometimes you can get away with funny jokes.
Yeah, you can actually. Yeah, yes, you can.
So okay, so like school. Even prior to college, do you feel like you did well in school, or was school difficult for you? No,
I can never learn. I'm a two-time college dropout.
Okay. We're going to get to that next.
Yeah, we'll get to that. In high school, I struggled. I was always creating something to generate some type of income, though, in high school.
Okay.
Right? So a good example, we had a rock band, and we produced a CD and we sold it, and that's how I got my entrepreneurial.
I can't remember the last time I've said the word CD.
I know, right? It feels weird.
It
felt
does
weird
feel
when I said that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So, and then I had a lawn care business as well.
Oh, very cool.
Back then, always been. I've always wanted to create my own thing, right? Even at that young age. And school was always a struggle for me because I just didn't learn the way they were teaching. Right?
So how did you think? All right, so fast forward. We're gonna kind of skip around this time in your life a little bit, but like fast forwarding a little bit. You start to work for your dad, and did you feel like did your dad have an expectation that that's what you would do forever to take it from him?
Yeah.
And did you did you feel like that could scratch the entrepreneur itch for you, or was it like at some point you knew I need to go build something?
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, the expectation was to take it over. It was not scratching the itch entirely. I learned a ton about managing customers, managing people, building processes and systems within an organization, but it wasn't really scratching my itch to own my own thing, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, I mean, how I got into the tech world from making teeth to making tech was my dad was very reluctant on investing in his website, and it really bothered me at a young age. I'm like, dude, we're in the 21st century.
Yeah, what year was this roughly?
This is 2008-ish. Yeah. And he's like, I'm like, can I get a marketing budget to like build out a website or find an agency? And he's like, you're the budget. I'm like, okay. So on nights and weekends, I learned how to build a website for my dad's business.
Which was way harder back then. There was no Squarespace or like templates.
No,
you had to code it.
Yeah, well, I learned how to code. I'm not a programmer by any means. If he held a gun to my head and said code something, I'd be dead. But I learned just enough to build websites, and then practice owners would ask my dad, "Hey, who built your website?" And then I started building websites for our clients,
Interesting.
our dental clients, right?
Interesting.
So that's what got me into tech. My dad not wanting to invest into his own marketing and said I was the budget.
So that's great. Okay. So I'm pretty sure that is what jumps you to your like first business, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to come back to that. Tell us about college. Like, so you go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because everyone else was doing it.
Okay. And what did you choose to study?
The first round, I chose to study music. Quickly dropped out because I'm like, there's no future. It's such a complicated industry. And I'm like, that's not what I want to really do. So I dropped out of that program really, really fast. And then I went to the second round was more geared towards tech. It was more of a trade school college where we learned like digital marketing and some development and UI UX. Mm-hmm. And I started going through that and then realized it was a waste of money because I was getting clients that were paying me to do it. And I was learning way faster, building sites and getting it in my hands dirty that way. So I dropped out because I'm like,
this doesn't make sense. I don't need this.
Yeah, and
right?
the thing that was my biggest issue is I've always known what I've wanted to do in life, create companies, and the challenge when going to school is the mindset is not geared. The education mindset is not geared towards entrepreneurship, and it drove me crazy. You know, I'm like, the reason why I'm here is because I want to go build a tech company, and I want to learn. I want to be able to talk to developers and understand, you know, how to talk to them so that I can build a tech company. And they're like, well, you know, you got to learn this stuff tactically so you can go and get a job and then you can think about building a tech company. I'm like, that's not my plan. I'm the wrong persona for your college. Right. So that was difficult. Dealing with the mindset, the education mindset definitely was against my grain in regards to wanting and knowing that I was going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I think people that feel, you know, highly creative, never satisfied.
Yeah.
You know, kind of hard, like the little boy, it's hard to sit still kind of thing, right? Like that's a lot of successful entrepreneurs kind of fit into
Very
that
common
mold.
Story.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the traditional, I'll say traditional education is not really like conducive to playing in the sandbox and figuring things out, right?
Well, yeah, very true. And often when I was in college and I got fed up with like a project that they assigned me to do, I often would go outsource the project to, I think at the time, it's not Upwork, but there was another, I can't remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Upwork.
Yeah.
Where you can find contractors. A lot of our projects were, you know, like building websites and things like that in college. And I got busy building websites and making money with clients, but I was still kind of in transition mode. I'm like, I want to get out of school, but I still want to do the projects and move forward. So I hired, in my early college days, I hired people to do my homework, basically.
That's awesome.
And I learned how
Before
to...
ChatGPT.
Before ChatGPT, yeah. And I learned how to delegate and how to write a job description and organize a project early on. So it still aided me, you know, in my journey of wanting to be an entrepreneur.
So you're saying it wasn't a waste.
It wasn't completely a waste. And often when I say, man, I dropped out of college twice, that doesn't mean I don't value education.
Yeah.
You know, I have a whole library of hundreds and hundreds of business books that I've read. I believe in self-education. And even today, education is one of my own core values, right? And continuing to educate myself. Because as an entrepreneur and a CEO, you're always selling on new waters.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what stage of the business I'm in today? I don't know. I've never been here before. I got to figure it out, right? Yeah. It's a constant learning. And if you stop, then you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
So like learning and education has always been really important to me, just in different forms.
Yeah. And
cheaper forms.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cheap. Well, in some ways more expensive. You know, I have a friend that always says to me every time you make a big mistake or, you know, like there was this time I was like, oh man, we did this thing and it cost us like $200,000 and we messed up. And he goes, well, you paid tuition. Yeah. Like in some ways it's very expensive.
Yeah,
right?
you're absolutely right. There's been in my career, there's always been mistakes I've made that has cost a lot of money that I got to fix. So yeah, that's tuition.
There was but I think
tuition just doesn't have equity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'd rather have equity.
Right?
That's true. So I was asked to speak at the BYU MBA,
Cool.
program with an emphasis in entrepreneurship. So I was speaking to future entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
The truth is, many of them weren't going to be entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm speaking to this crowd, and the professors there who invited me to speak, and the first slide is, if you're serious about being an entrepreneur, quit school now.
Yep.
So he shared with me the survey stuff
we
after.
Have an entrepreneurial program here.
I mean, the entrepreneur program should say, all right, you get credits for launching a business and get to, 100,000 in revenue.
Oh, I think that would be the right approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You get credits if you get revenue.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, for certain roles, there's a lot of things that do make sense. And I think there are people that should be in school, and people like us hire people that do go to school.
Yes.
And in a lot of ways, we need that.
I like smart people.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Like, I'd rather have, my dad used to always say this, like, if a doctor was operating on you, would you rather have a C student or an A student?
Yeah.
A. Clear, right?
Yeah,
the A student,
clear.
right?
Yeah.
So, okay, you're at this dental lab and you're working for your dad. You feel a little unsatisfied, but you're learning.
Yep.
And you kind of stumble into this website thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do next?
Yeah, I really started digging deep, and like, cool, websites are cool, but the SaaS thing is fascinating, right? And what, 2000, this is 2010, so SaaS is still pretty young.
Yeah, it's like just coming out.
It's just coming out, and I'm like, this is so fascinating to me. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I got to figure out how to create a SaaS product. Originally, I wanted to get out of dentistry altogether because I was so fed up with it. But I had a mentor, Mr. Josh Little, at the time.
Josh Little's awesome. Yeah. He's been on this podcast too.
I figured he'd be on this podcast. Josh, if you're listening, what's up, dog? And Josh, I remember going out to lunch with him, and he probably doesn't remember this. And he sat down and looked at me. He's like, Jordan, why are you trying to get out of dental when you spent 6-7 years in this industry? You know it like the back of your hand. It's tough to get to know an industry. Why don't you figure out something for dental and build a SaaS product there? And I'm like, yeah, that actually makes sense. So I went back, to my dad's business, and I started thinking over the next few weeks. I'm like, what can I do? What are the problems that we're seeing in the dental? First, I started with the dental lab. That was too boring, and the TAM was too small.
Did your dad have like any sense that you probably weren't going to stick around forever?
Oh yeah.
So he knew. So it wasn't like a crazy surprise to him.
I was always talking about building businesses, and I tried building like a little agency a couple times.
Yep.
So I was always doing something.
Yeah.
I even created websites and like would rank them and would try to build like little digital products, and and they were successful. Not to like what BoomCloud is today.
Right.
But my dad knew that I was probably gonna peace out and build my own thing, right?
Right.
But one day I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, we get a lot of calls about practices venting about dental insurance, and I hate it because we're at the tail end of it being the lab. Practices would call us all the time and say, hey, can you guys discount our prices because the insurance company is forcing us to discount? And I'm like, I didn't sign the dotted line.
Yeah.
The contracts. Why do I have to
eat the revenue?
Why do I have to suffer from your horrible business decision? And it became a real big pain point for me. And everyone would just vent about it and complain about it. And I'm like, man, there's got to be
That's a
way.
problem though, right? Because they put in the order based on what the patient needs, right?
Yeah.
And then they kind of come back to renegotiate.
Yeah,
after it's been done. You're already working on it.
Yeah, insurance is a horrible model for most industries that it's in. It oftentimes inflates an industry and adds complexities to the business owners. Like in dentistry, it hurts their cash flow, it kills their profit margins, and then jeopardizes their patient experience. Now, if I had a partner or employee that did that, I'd fire their ass. Right?
Definitely.
So talking to our customers at the dental lab, I'm like, man, there's a big problem here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are talking about it. Oh, and then I go, visit my mom, and all she does is complain about insurance because she's dealing with it as an office manager every day. I'm like, what is going on? There's an opportunity here that's untapped. So I literally, I watched a couple of startup courses by Steve Blank, and he's got a saying that says, get out of the building and talk to potential customers.
Mm-hmm.
Just get out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So I convinced my dad to do all sales and marketing for the dental lab so that I could get out, not only help him, but start really investigating and asking questions to practice owners and office managers every day. So I started asking around, and one day I popped into one of our clients that had like 10 locations that they owned, and they had just launched their membership plan. And I just had read a book called The Automatic Customer by John Warlow. He also wrote another really popular book called Built to Sell.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated about Automatic Customer talks about, creating predictable recurring revenue in any business and why that's important. And this practice that I walked in on, I'm like, they launched their membership program. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, we're so sick of insurance companies that we're just offering our own membership program to our uninsured and inactive patients to get them to come back and say yes to treatment. So it acts as a full revenue management tool for practice.
Right?
Yeah, it's a subscription. So, and I sat down with the CEO of the dental office, and he's like, we love this because it generates predictable recurring revenue for our practice. We're able to reduce dependence on these insurance companies that are killing our profit margins and hurting our patient experience and cash flow. And it allows our patients are more loyal, and they end up purchasing more with us. I'm like, that's fascinating. How are you managing it? And he's like, go talk to Becky, right? The office manager for all the locations. And she pulled out a binder, right? And I'm like, oh, this is the same problem my dad had. I don't want to invest into technology because it's 2010, right?
Right.
And I'm like, fascinating. Would you guys be open if I created a software tool for you guys? If I designed something to help you manage your membership program at scale? And they're like, sure.
Wow.
And BoomCloud was born, right? I then went immediately home, designed the first version of BoomCloud. Did
it feel to you like it would be like a web application, like as we know programming today, or did it feel like it would be like a website you could launch something really quick? Or
it was a web application, and I when I designed it, like that was early SaaS, emerging. So I was reading articles from like SaaStr and a couple of the early guys that were coming out talking about the SaaS industry. So I knew what I wanted to build from like a technology strategy, I guess. So we designed it, took it to them, and they loved it. And it took me a few months to find some co-founders, and we launched.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So you decide you want to do this. And next step was co-founders?
Yeah, so I at the same time talking to these customers, I was in search for co-founders, and eventually finally found one who was one of my neighbors at the time, and we started building it together. And then he got distracted with other. I think he got gobbled up by a VC-backed SaaS company, so his time diminished, and we split his equity in half and brought on another co-founder. Right, to continue the project, because by then we were generating leads and getting market awareness, and I'm like, I can't stop.
You were getting started, yeah. Was there your first founders like technical co-founders?
Yeah,
okay.
They were
engineers.
Yep, they were engineers. Didn't know anything about business. Didn't want to talk to customers at all. In fact, that was the number one rule with me: was we don't talk to customers, which is backwards thinking. But that's how a lot of developers and engineers think sometimes. Yeah. Is that we don't want to talk to customers. We don't want to deal with their problems. And I'm like, I want to talk to every customer because I
want to solve their problem.
I want to solve their problem because that's what's created this, fellas.
Yeah. But programmers do tend to be a little bit more introverted.
Yeah,
right?
They like to hide in their code caves, right?
Totally.
In the basement somewhere. Yeah. So,
so you start coding.
Start coding it, and I actually started marketing it before it even existed. So by the time the product was done, which they always said, hey, it's going to be 3 months. A year later, year and a half later, something like that.
Everyone listening was about to start one. It's going to cost twice as much and take twice as long.
Yep, twice as much, twice as long. So I hated waiting for the engineering, my co-founders to build. So I just started telling the story to the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I immediately started writing for like Dental Economics magazine and just building content. And I wrote an ebook and created a lead magnet system.
How before we get into starting to scale this thing yet, how were you going to pay for it? Like, what was the plan?
Yeah, so they're the investment.
You what?
My co-founders were the investment. We just did equity.
But
right?
you guys put it together. Was the thought like, hey, we're gonna try and bootstrap this thing, or we're gonna go try and fundraise? Like,
yeah, I was only focused on bootstrapping.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about investing. In fact, the scene here in Utah, there was
not,
no investor scene.
It was hardly there. There was like V Spring and a couple, right? Yeah.
It was small, and I didn't really care. I just wanted to pay my mortgage because I chose to leave my dad's business before the product had.
Did you start your family yet?
Yeah. I had a young daughter, my oldest daughter. She's 10 now, and I think she was 2, maybe one or 2.
Okay.
So young family, small house, mortgage.
That's scary,
right?
Yeah. So how are you going to pay the bills? Were you able to like?
Great question.
You know, the website thing, did that at least kind of cover for a bit?
So that's exactly what I did
Okay.
To cover the bills. It was hard for about 3 to 6 months where I'm like, I don't know if I can make the mortgage payment, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It was tight for a while. But I, knowing that I was going into the SaaS model, instead of doing like an agency, hey, pay me $5,000 and I'll build your website, I just went to dental offices and said, hey, it's just $200 a month, and here's these templates that you could use for your site. I'll build it and I'll manage it. So I built that up to about $8,000 in MRR. At that time,
so you could at least cover the basics.
It still took a while. There was about a year and a half of managing that company and then building BoomCloud on the side.
Yes,
right. Most people ask like, how did you bootstrap? I'm like, well, I built a small company
creatively,
a new company.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and I was still selling to the target market, right? So all my website clients at the time that were paying me a subscription were BoomCloud customers, because part of the pitch was, I'm building this product, I'll automatically integrate it into your website, and help you build your membership plan, right? So all of them agreed to sign on for BoomCloud when we launched it. Yeah. And they're paying me for website management.
Exactly. That's smart. That's
how I did it without having any money. And then, of course, when I said my co-founders were the investment via equity,
and they worked for free,
they worked for free for equity, of course. Right. So that was just our mindset. Like we just got to get this off the ground and build it. By the time we were ready to launch, I think we had like 400 or 500 leads, warm leads that raised their hand and were interested. So we had a market ready to go right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you hit the ground running selling.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the first. And the funny thing with selling is once again, SaaS was, newish. So we're like, how do we sell this thing? Do we just email blast everybody and everyone's going to sign up? That's what we originally thought. It was wild. So I guess we did that. We email blast everybody, said, hey, try BoomCloud for free. And we got a few people signing up, but they didn't convert. Yeah. And it bothered me. And then I think I got on to like some blog that said, you got to do a demo process. And September 7th, the day after my birthday, we sold our first customer. And that's what I call BoomCloud's revenue birthday. We sold the first customer a month after we launched the freemium or the free trial version, because we switched to a demo process, which we didn't.
Your birthday is September 6th?
September 6th, yeah.
That was the day I sold my last business.
Nice. That's a good era.
A day that will live in infamy.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So you're selling.
Yeah.
And you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at what point do you start putting people either on payroll or hiring other employees? Like, did it take a while?
Yeah, most of the time I think my superpower back then was to be able to convince people to come work for free for commission based only.
Yeah.
So I convinced all my early employees to work for 100% commissions, and it worked out really well for them. And a lot of them were sales and support people. And in those early days, we kind of merged the roles. You're doing sales, but then you support the customer too.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll pay you a commission for the sell. And, at that time we had like a setup fee, $1,000 setup fee that we charged. And I just took that and paid 100% of the setup fee and kept the MRR for the business to run. Right. And we built it up to it, for a while that way. And it was awesome because our CAC was basically paid off day one of the customer. I don't know if we would have done it with our model today. We wouldn't have been able to.
Well, but that's important, I think, for people to understand because, you see about what's like on social media and LinkedIn and stuff and what you're reading about in blogs, Crunchbase, and, you raise a bunch of money and then you start hiring all these people. Yeah, exactly. And then you start hiring all these really expensive salaried people.
Yep.
And you say, today that'd be really hard. Well, if you were starting your business today, you might be thinking about it differently.
Absolutely.
Back then it wasn't like, well, what's everyone else doing? Back then it was what works.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
what works? How do we get revenue in fast?
Totally.
I got that mortgage I got to pay.
Yep. Yeah. My first business, Bootstrapped, we did the same thing, self-funded proposal. We're like, all right, basically a good chunk of what comes in month one, we need that to cover our nut.
Yep.
And then hopefully they stay on for a while and then we make money,
Yeah. And there's always that. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's how it was. We just kind of closed deals and slowly built it. We operated off of a percentage-based budget, which we still do today. So as revenue came in, like we and filled the budget, we like, hey, we can hire a support person now. Mm-hmm. So as we were focusing on generating more MRR every month, we literally would hit a certain revenue amount and say, hey, the budget says, because it's all percentage-based and it scales up, the budget says we can hire somebody. This is the amount. Who do we want? Mm-hmm. Right? And we still do that today. Yeah. Which is wild to me that has scaled.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems weird in the tech space, unfortunately, but like to most business people, it's like, all right, let's operate on a budget.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Budget is the budget is my master.
Yeah. It's like a budget below our revenue, you know, not above it.
Yep. And it's different today with all the VCs and private equity. They just don't think that way anymore. I kind of feel like a lonely man in the ocean.
Well, I think it's shifting a little bit. I think for a lot of these early stage startups right now that profitability or near break even is a great thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And whereas 2 years ago, if you were a profitable and early stage tech company, they'd be like, well, you're dumb. You're not growing fast enough. Yeah. You should be investing in growth. And I think it turns out that you can do both. You can have a well-run business with good economics and you can grow it. Yeah. You just don't need to, buy a freaking Traeger for every employee for Christmas. I
know that story well.
I'm not calling out anyone specific, but like there are things, that go to waste. And you look back, I think every entrepreneur, eventually, if you sell BoomCloud or
that's
move on, right? Yeah, eventually one day. And you'll look back and be like, man, despite everything you learned and did, you could still say, I could have done that more efficient still. Yeah. Right? Like there's always room for improvement.
Oh, always. Yeah. Even today I'm looking back, I'm like, I should have done this 2 years ago, but I'm doing it now because I learned.
Yeah. I was talking to a founder of a unicorn acquired, tech company here in Utah that everyone would know of. Sure. And we were talking about burn and growth. And he literally told me, he's like, man, we spent way more money than we needed to. Yeah. Looking back, he's like, oh, so many things were unnecessary. Yeah. Despite doing really well. So what do you, what were the biggest challenges that you were facing, at that time, in the first couple of years of the business?
Yeah. So in those it was Wild West in that era is that often the word I choose to use. The founders probably were the most difficult piece because you're growing a company. We had an operating agreement. I learned a lot from my dad that not having an operating agreement is disastrous because he did not have one with my grandpa, and it was not good. But It was wild trying to convince my co-founders to then jump ship and come full time. That was probably the biggest challenge because they were then at the time they were working and they had awesome salaries, and then they were building BoomCloud. And we reached this this point in time where it's like, yeah, this is not gonna work out.
We're going to make a change. Yeah.
Right? I'm like, either you guys got to come on or I buy you out. So the story is I bought all of my co-founders out and then rehired because we were paying them salaries and things like that. Not much, but we then took that budget and then hired more developers. That probably was the hardest part in that era, is dealing with those early
interesting,
founders.
like from the perspective of the technical co-founder, it's very difficult because programmers, especially now, maybe even back then, but especially now, senior programmers, they're worth a lot. They can command a really high salary.
Yeah.
And, even a funded early stage tech startup, like there's still, you can only pay so much.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have a salary sacrifice, right? In addition to the equity. And it's like, and they also are going to have a smaller amount of equity. And so it's like, is it worth it enough to them? And for many, it's not. And for some it is, but for many it's not. And that's okay.
Yep. Yeah. And we agreed on the terms and, followed the operating agreement and bought them all out, which was super scary.
Yeah.
I think at that time we were generating $30,000 a month in recurring revenue. And I'm like, oh man, this payment that I have to make a month is a support person. How am I going to get past the stage? 6 months later, we more than doubled the company.
Yeah.
You know
totally.
what I mean? And I'm like, okay, never mind.
Totally. Yeah, you're definitely on this like crazy roller coaster, right? Like I was at lunch today with a customer and, another tech company and, CEO's talking and we're just talking about like the every other hour sort of roller coaster that it is.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't. No, and it just gets worse.
Yeah, it's like we're going
bigger.
out of business. Yeah. We are in business. We're going out of business. Now we're going crazy. It's just like, the whole time.
Yeah,
so.
It is a ride. That is for sure. But yeah, that was the hardest part of that early stage. But once we figured that out, we were able to kind of de-bottleneck the issues of that era, and we thrived right after that, which was wild to me. Right? When replacing our developers, our co-founder developers with tactical developers was way better because we started innovating more and fixing bugs and just building faster.
Less baggage.
My co-founders couldn't do it all at that time, and it was a challenge. I definitely have a ton of respect for them and very grateful for what they built, in those early days, what got us to where we're at today.
Yeah,
they definitely were a huge piece of our story, often forgotten now because most of my employees don't know that there was
a long
founders.
Time ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago also. I mean, you're talking like, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've been building this business for some time now. And what is next for you guys? Like what is the next, what's kind of the next big thing and where's your focus?
Yeah. So at this stage, at least running BoomCloud, I've transitioning, I guess, more to like a founder investor mindseted role, where we're investing more into the people in the business and trying to grow it faster, right? And my role now is
it's still bootstrapped, right?
We're still bootstrapped. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm just taking my own money and putting it back in and saying, I want it back fast. Right. So it's my stage right now is I'm a CEO, founder, and investor of my own company, which is really fun, but also that's a lot. Yeah. Right. So, but building out my leadership team has been the critical piece so that I could do that. Right. We just brought on our second VP of sales on Monday. He started.
Awesome.
So we're really focusing on scaling, and we've got a large partnership that we're just landing here in a week that's going to go public.
Very
the company
cool.
You'll know. And just growing that way. And then my plan is to eventually exit in the next couple of years.
Nice.
As we scale. I know what the company needs to get the valuation and the multiple.
Yeah.
Right. That I'd want. But I would exit and then move on to my next idea.
Yeah, because you're not going to be done, right?
I think I'd be really bored if I was done. I mean, the goal is to exit and lock it all down. So even if I didn't need to do it again, I'll be fine. Right. That's always the goal.
Yeah.
But talking to my wife, I think she knows that I will go insane if I just sit around. Right?
Yeah, I've been there. It doesn't. So we sold, and then the pandemic happened, and so I was kind of forced at home.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started driving race cars, and then after that, I kind of treated that like its own little business.
Sure.
You know.
Cool.
And then I was like, that was fun. What now?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I already have ideas that I want to do. You know, after I exit BoomCloud.
And how many employees do you guys have right now?
We are at 32-ish employees right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
that's really awesome. And so, you know, I'm sure like over this like decade period, you know, I mean, really, you've been running the business a while, right?
Yeah, it'll be 8 years on September 7th.
That's awesome.
Or August 1 is really when I started, but
yeah.
So it'll be 8 years of full time.
So, like, what sort of advice would you give somebody who's thinking about bootstrapping a SaaS company?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think most people probably believe that it's not possible to do that.
A lot of people do. Even when I started, a lot of people, you know, that I spoke with, they went and got funding. You know, I had friends like that owned companies before. They got funding, and they're like, "Oh, just don't get funding." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I should listen to the guys that have gone before me." So there was still funding going on, and in my mind, I'm like, "Is this the right thing?" And even today, I have the thoughts like, "Should I go get money?"
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go look at it, I'm like, "No."
Well, it changes things because as soon as you don't do well,
mm-hmm.
You have very limited options on how it can still benefit you as a founder. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Because now
optionality is the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
As a founder in a lot of different areas, right? When it comes to money, getting money, when it comes to partnering with other companies, I want other options, right? When it comes to exit, like I want the ability to have optionality. So that's really, really important to me, and it always has been. So if you're a founder and you're thinking about starting a company, a SaaS company, which is an awesome business to get into, the truth is you can do it. I remember recently just talking to a early SaaS founder, and he's like, I don't know if we can continue doing this. We're bootstrapped. And they were like at 40 or 50,000 in MRR. And I look back at like my history, and it took me, I don't even remember how, it took me a little bit longer than they did. And I'm like, you guys could do this. It's like, now they're like double than what they were last I talked to them.
I have friends that are like doing 3 million, 5 million, whatever of ARR. And, you know, they're like, oh man, I don't think we're gonna be able to raise, you know, the next round and we're going to go out of business. I'm like, you're not going to go out of business if you have a few million in revenue. You can figure it out. You just figure it out.
You just optimize the
shit. But you know, it kind of, when you do raise money, it puts you in this mindset. Now, I believe, so I've raised, you know, my last business was VC backed.
Sure.
And
sounds like your first one was bootstrapped.
My first one was friends and family and debt.
Okay, cool.
So we probably raised like,
that's practical.
Yeah, it's practical. It was probably like 500 total over a few years.
Sure.
And then I was bought out by my partner, so I left.
Yeah.
That was kind of an easier transaction. And then the last one I funded it to get us started. That was kind of the pre-seed, didn't really know what I was doing. And then we raised a Series A. So we raised about, 10 million total. And then sold that one. And then with Distro, it was just a weird market anyway. We actually had an offer in the summer of 22. It was a month before the NASDAQ crashed in June.
Okay.
And then they come back and try and retrade the deal.
Sure.
And we were about to take it.
Yeah.
And then they came and retraded, and we're like, nah, we're out.
Yeah.
So then we decided, look, let's just sell customers. Turns out let's just go get revenue.
They're the best investor.
Yeah, they're the best investor. And then you don't have to give up any equity, right?
Yeah.
And then I invested more money.
Cool.
And then, Distro today is still bootstrapped.
Sweet.
And
so you kind of have both sides. That's cool.
Definitely. And so what I like though is that there is a path each way. And when you do the math, like I've seen different data sets. Some have said that you can make more money with a successful, VC backed exit.
Yeah.
But the way the dilution plays out is that I believe more often, there's less risk to bootstrapping and holding most of the equity and then selling it at a lower valuation. You actually net a larger amount of cash.
Yeah. So I'm a part of a group called the Practical Founders.
Yeah, Greg Head.
Greg Head, yeah. So I meet with Greg and a group of us each week, which if you're getting ready to start, a company, a SaaS company, or you're in the beginning stages, like listen to his podcast. It's awesome.
It's great. He literally interviews people that are bootstrap founders getting to an exit.
Yeah. And then behind the scenes, he's got masterminds, and I'm part of one of them.
Cool.
So we meet every 2 times a month.
Cool.
And we just met, and all we discuss is how are we bootstrapping and how are we scaling our businesses so that one day we can get, in Greg's word, get the big prize, right? That's how it talks about earning your equity, I guess. But I think it's totally doable, and there's more people doing it than you think. Before I didn't, I listened to Greg's podcast, but never joined the mastermind until last year sometime. And I quickly discovered that there are a lot of bootstrappers out there that are building awesome companies, and nobody talks about them because they're not raising the money. And getting
they don't need the press release.
They don't need
care.
The press release.
There's no VC to do the press release.
In fact, starting BoomCloud, I didn't care. I never cared about press releases. I cared about if my customers reading like a magazine or an article that we would show up there. I didn't care about the tech industry or you know what I mean? Right. Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So my mindset was always like, let's get the awareness of our customers, like getting industry shout out, PR and things like that in the tech industry didn't make sense. Maybe it helps with recruiting, probably, but that's not what we were first focused on, right? So if you're starting out a company, you can bootstrap. There's a lot of people doing it. It is a great way. And if you're a first-time founder, it teaches you so much. And you become your own investor in the company, and you learn how to think like one. I think it's a really great way to learn. And if you then want to go get VC or private equity, you at least have the knowledge and maybe the street cred to do so, right? But
it gives you options.
It really does. And once again, optionality is a really important word for bootstrappers specifically. But I would recommend you listen to that podcast and just know that like the customer is all that matters. That is your number one investor. Mm-hmm. So focus on the customer and get the product right, and you will have many investors called customers signing up and giving you money to fund your own company. I think that is the best way to get it started, because you're learning and you don't have a board, you don't have complexities. You can just focus on customers and your team.
Yeah.
And if you think about a business, that's all it is. Yeah. I got to attract customers and I got to attract team members to service a product or whatever, right? That's really all a business is. So it's like, as long as I can do that, I'm good.
Yep.
And if I can go get money to accelerate that once I know the recipe,
it's way less risky that way. So even if you do bootstrap successfully and then you raise later, you've already figured out how to build a good business.
Yes.
And so the likelihood of you being successful with the cash is much greater.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of risk for investors if they're investing into an entrepreneur that, hasn't scaled their company up a little bit, right? I would never invest into like a pre-revenue company. That seems so risky. There's so much unknowns.
There's even a lot who do.
Even a smaller one, right? That you're like, oh, okay, well, let's watch them a little bit. Right? I've been watching a couple startups here in the dental SaaS space, because something about Utah has a lot of dental SaaS companies. And there's one that I really want to purchase, but I'm like, it would be, I got to watch it still, right? Because there's still risks in an early stage startup, even if it's generating revenue.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think fear, when it comes to bootstrapping, fear and talking in your head and saying, I don't know if we can do this, that causes a lot of doubt. And I remember a lot of doubt inside my head when I started BoomCloud. When I would see, another company raise money, I'm like, am I doing this the right way? Now I don't think that way, right? I love being captain of my own ship and, controller of my own destiny.
Yep.
It still has risks. It still has challenges, but I absolutely love it. So if you think you can bootstrap, you can bootstrap.
And if you're not sure, you still can.
If you're, thank you. If you're not sure, you still can. So many people do it.
Yeah.
It's just go meet those people, go talk to them.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few conferences, but definitely Greg Head's group is great.
Greg's is
his content.
His content's my favorite. That's what.
Follow him on LinkedIn.
Yes, follow Greg on LinkedIn. He produces awesome LinkedIn posts. In fact, that's what got me. I would read his LinkedIn posts before. I would read his LinkedIn posts more than I listened to his podcast.
So Greg's CEO when he was chief marketing officer at Infusionsoft.
Infusionsoft.
So Clayton Mask was on my board.
Yeah,
and then I had hired a couple of people from Infusionsoft as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's how I got to know Greg pretty well.
Yeah.
He still has a place in Park City, right?
Yeah, he was here a few weeks ago. We always hang out when he's here.
Yeah, I'll have to catch up with him soon.
Yeah, so join groups like that. Get with like-minded founders that think. I'm always an open book. If you're building a company, you're like, should I bootstrap or I want to bootstrap? I'm always happy to talk to those people.
Next thing, how do people reach you if they've got questions for you?
Follow me on LinkedIn, and if you really want to get a hold of me, you can email me. My email address is Jordon, Jordon, @boomcloud.com. Now, I get a lot of emails, so I'm not the best. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, you reach out to me there. I do check LinkedIn a ton. And if you're genuine when you reach out to me, I'll know. I get a lot of private equity people reaching out to me, and it's like, oh, next. Right. But yeah, that's my email. You can email me there, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, and I am happy to meet with any founder. That's one of my passions, is to help other founders, especially if they're doubting if they should bootstrap or not.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Jordan. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.